Shalom Aleichem. I'm Eli Umaner. I'm on the board of the Brooklyn Eruv. This is Harav Shmuel Poltzman, world-renowned Eruv expert, a Talmud of Hagoan official Hershkowitz. He's been working in Eruv and learning in Eruv and helping Eruv for multiple decades, over 30 years now, and a real great expert. And you don't have to take my word for it. Anyone who knows him could tell you that, but you could look at his great blog. It's called eruvonline.blogspot.com. Over there, you will find a tremendous amount of intricate Hilchas Eruvin explained in English in a most spectacular way, and so many different inyanim within Eruvin that he helped with. And I myself, when I was learning Eruvin, started around 9 years ago. When I learn stuff, I go to talk to other people when I'm in a sugya, and not many people know the sugya. I had different questions and stuff that I was like stuck on, and different ways how to be miyashiv them. And I was consulting with Harav Gabriel Zinner, and he told me, I need to introduce you to the world's greatest expert, and that is Harav Poltzman. I then became his Talmud. I learned very much from him. I got smicha from Harav Zinner and Eruvin, and I've been learning since then. Eruvin really never ends, I would say. I've written much about Eruvin myself, as has many different responses. You can see on my own website on chabaderuv.com. And the rest is what it is.
Thank you, Eli. Harav Eli. I wanted to say that I'm honored to be called a Rebbe over here by you in particular, as people will, it will be apparent soon that this is a real expert in Eruvin, and from the few left in the world today. We'll get back, and we'll get back to that soon. But let me just give a little introduction. What this is all about. First of all, I serve on the board of both the Boro Park Eruv and the Brooklyn Eruv. The Brooklyn Eruv is under the Hechsher of Rav Yankov Zayda, a dayan in the Mishna Berurah in Williamsburg, a world-renowned Talmud Chacham and one of the Bal Igros of the Williamsburg Eruv as well. He's also the esteemed author of the Sefer Baitasher. The board of the Brooklyn Eruv consists of Rabbi Yossel Greenwald, a veteran in the field of Eruvin with many years of experience, Rabbi Leo Umaner here, whom you will be hearing a lot from soon, together, and myself. Together, we bring a combination of halachic expertise and practical oversight to the Eruv supervision. Established in 2022, the Brooklyn Eruv was designed with the ambitious goal of encompassing all neighborhoods, including those that had never previously been zoiche to an Eruv. While also facilitating inter-Eruv connections, its creation reflects both meticulous planning and a deep commitment to serving the broader Jewish community. Raveli over here has also built this Eruv, and as you will see soon, I don't believe there's another Eruv that was built by such a true expert in Eruvin, in Hilchas Eruvin. Almost all those who build Eruvin do not know the Indian that well. Never mind, as we will get to see soon, most Rabbanim don't know it as so well either. Anyway, what sparked this response and why we're doing this recording was the public disparaging of Eruvin by a rabbi in Flatbush, Rabbi Kleinman. We will demonstrate that he simply does not know the facts, nor the halachic issues. He simply has an agenda. We always try to have civil conversation. We even tried to arrange a meeting with those Rabbanim, and they refused, instead resorting to public Hitzos laws.
Right. I would say that part of what we established this organization wasn't only to establish the Brooklyn Eruv. Prior to that, we were helping other Eruvin, writing about Eruvin, educating about it. And as soon as I heard what Rabbi Kleinman first said in his shul prior to this video, it was like a couple of months prior, I would say 6 to 8 weeks. One of his congregants called me, as his father-in-law is a supporter of the Eruv, and was telling me this, and I told him, look, this is old stuff that was already rechecked by Rav Hamachshir. This is being put forward by a mesarev ldin that has an agenda, and that it's nonsense.
All of this will be explained
right,
soon.
But either way, I said, we're more than happy to sit and meet with your Rav. With pleasure. Make a meeting, and we'll discuss it, and we'll see if we can get to the bottom of it. And he refused. After that, we also emailed, and we were trying to set up a meeting, which they said they would. But then this video came out right a few days after they wanted to meet. 10 days after this, like we were discussing dates when to meet. He went and made this video. Now, had he been looking for the truth, it's very important to point out here, then he would come sit down with us or sit down with Rav Hamachshir, try to actually get to the emes and see if he could work it out before going on this public laws of 3 different Eruv and 3 different Rabbanim that are behind it. Flatbush Eruv being 9 years that they're claiming that this Eruv was bad, and mitamol, he woke up now to just go and disparage people. And had he came and sat down with us, even if we disagreed, right, and he still was holding that he wanted X, Y, and Z, if he was coming to help and to not be one that's just looking to damage, and look, if you're ready to put your name on it and you're ready to, then you're going to make other people more comfortable by using this Eruv, and you want to do some things that we think are silly or not needed, we'll still do it. Part of what we try to do here is to defuse the fights. We don't want this public spirit that hurts Eruvin and casts doubt on people's minds on using Eruvin, and it's not in our interest. So, but he forced our hand.
Which, by the way, this is part of the modus operandi here, is to
raise
sort of create doubts in people's minds, and this is all that this has been going on for so many years. They did it in Boro Park.
Right.
They constantly.
Yeah, well, let's focus on here because we have a long night.
Right. So, though it is painful to address such matters in the public sphere, as our leader said, we had no choice but to rebut this unfounded and ill-informed effort to disparage our Eruv and Rav. Rabbi Kleinman demoted to Yid in Williamsburg. What would you do, dear listener, if someone were to attack your Rav or your Rosh Hashiva? Rabbi Kleinman is, in effect, asserting that our Bal Machshir, by permitting matters which he claims invalidate the Eruv l'choladeis, is guilty of being a choite machtes rabim. I implore you, dear listener, to reflect carefully on what is being alleged here. If ever there was a case of Chil Hashem, this is one. And b'mokim sheish Chil Hashem and chalpen kavod derav. What has taken place is the besmirching of a major Talmud Chacham, a Goyen in London, whose stature far exceeds that of his critic, and this is in a matter of which the latter shows no true grasp, as we shall demonstrate. This chutzpah is so great, we have no alternative to dissect and demolish his words by demonstrating his ignorance in the facts and his haratzus in the inyan. After listening to the haratzus statements being propagated by the rabbi, which we will highlight, he has the chutzpah to claim that not allowing him to see the Eruv constitutes a reisa. One must ask, why should he be included in any discussions or inspections when he plainly lacks any real understanding of the matter, as you shall see? Dear listener, please understand that Eruvin is a highly specialized mitzvah, and very few people, including Rabbanim, possess a deep and thorough understanding of the intricacies involved.
I think it's important here that I think we should start with Halakhic Nakodas, because I think ultimately, we're going to show you enough where you're going to see that he has a way of stretching stories and connecting dots that didn't happen. But ultimately, in terms of what we could prove to you for a fact, is that what he said la halacha, that's something we could factually prove. what he claims, all these wild claims are harder to, ultimately you're going to have to decide
This
who
is
you
not
want to
a
believe.
He said, she said.
Exactly.
We're
going to go first with the halacha to
Right.
establish it, because any Rav that's going to come out and say such haratzus without having looked into it, when he's dealing with such an important matter, when an Eruv is under a hechsher, a very respected Rav, and he's going after people that have been carrying in an Eruv, the Flatbush Eruv, for 9 years, that would go out and say stuff like that are so obviously wrong, should lose any credibility. So I'll start with what he said about our Eruv. He raised 2 halakhic issues about our Eruv. Aside from conspiracy theories that it doesn't exist, or there's pirtzas, which is just not true. He said that we have let me first introduce, part of what we do when we make an Eruv, aside for the matzah that we make as the actual Eruv Chatzeres, we need to close the area to be one area, no gaps in the area. So we take the walls, that as much existing structure that we have, whether it's mechitzas sabatim or fences or different mechitzas, and now we have gaps and we have to enclose them. So what we do is we make tzuras HaPesach. A tzuras HaPesach is a virtual doorpost. You put a lechi from here and a lechi on the other side, which is 2, let's say, poles, and you put a string in the top. However, it doesn't have to touch. As long as the lechi is 10 tefachim, we say good asik or chavit. The discussion's beyond the scope over here, but the general view is good asik, which reaches the top post, and now you have a tzuras HaPesach. So what he was claiming is that in between our tzuras HaPesach, there is an obstruction that comes in the middle, which stops the good asik, and therefore tzuras HaPesach is no good.
In some places, the silicon goes up a wall, and then above it, it has to connect to a kanal gabein with an imaginary good asik. And on top, in between the silicon and the kanal gabein, there's a protrusion on the wall sticking out. It's like a ledge that runs along the whole wall. So it blocks any good asik that you could have had.
Now, what he is referring to is what the Taz brings in Shulchan Aruch. When a gag is being boilet, it's an actual roof in between the lechi and the tzuras, the mashke from top. The Taz is brought by the Baal Tanya as a das yachid, veish mishaymer, and left in Sarchion. The Aruch HaShulchan rejects this Taz, and the Taisa Shabbos rejects this Taz. They're leaving it the question from in kippah, the din by kippah, which is a daf yud aleph, where you have a doorway where there's stones that are built up in the middle and it's not fully open. And we say good asik, that as long as you have 10 tefachim of the lechi going straight, we'll say good asik, we consider it a mechitza, despite the obstruction. Whether we say good asik or not is a separate discussion. Now, we are still machmer for this Taz, but it's just important to illustrate that even this Taz is not the mainstream opinion. It's not the public now. The Mishna Berurah is machmer like the Taz. However, no one is interpreting the Taz that you can't have any obstruction. You can't have something as large as a gag that doesn't fit the place of a Pesach. As the Taz says, it's not a Pesach ba'avi inji. No one makes a Pesach and has a whole roof obstructing the whole Pesach. Nowhere does it say that you can't have any obstruction. They're making some diukim possibly they're not understanding. Now, first important before I explain why it can't be is that Hagoan Rav Shlomo Auerbach Zachar and Tzadik Levracha and Mincha Shlomo explicitly states that we only are makbid that there shouldn't be a gag violet, not any obstruction. He doesn't say yesh lahachmer, toiv lahachmer, no shasot chach. He's clearly learning that you don't say it, as does the Maimer Mordechai. Now, if they want to say otherwise, they would have to come and prove that. But the idea to say that good asik itself is interrupted, that is haratzus, because if you look in Siman Shimem Hey, at the end, the Mechaber brings about a gaga boilet, which is you have walls of you have a house and you have a roof, and the roof extends over the walls of the house. The idea is if you have no roof, there's no extension coming out over the house, then the walls of the house continue good asik, and you could carry on your roof because it's a reshus hayachid. So the Mechaber says that the roof is extending over the house, over the walls, and it's saying the inyan in a way that the mechitzas aren't nekaras, which is clear that some obstruction would come in and it wouldn't be considered that. Now, there is a discussion whether it's 3 tvachim or 4 tvachim. The Mishna Berurah is saying that we're making 3 or 4, but it's not the point right here. The Taz on this what the Mechaber states says that the reason is you don't say good asik when the mechitzas aren't nikara. So the point is that the good asik itself isn't interrupted by the obstruction. If the mechitzah itself isn't nicker, or isn't noticeable to the person standing on top, so I'm talking, he has to stand on the edge if he could bend over. It's a long discussion. That's when we don't say good asik. But it's clear that good asik could go even if there's some obstruction. Now, the obstruction that he's talking about, which was not our Eruv, but
Right.
our
That's an
Rav
important
Hamachshir.
point. It's actually not.
Yeah, but it's not. It would be good either way.
Yeah, it would be good though.
Our Rav Hamachshir allows that. We had an obstruction that was along the wall. There was almost like a molding coming out on top, made out of stone. The same texture of the wall, the same type of material, coming out less than a tefach, maybe an inch or two, not even.
And we'll
So-
get to how we know this.
He sent us a
Photographs.
picture. No,
We
he
have
sent us a
photographs.
photo, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
We
we
know.
didn't, we'll
Right.
get to that.
We'll get to that in a minute. So I
Yeah.
know what he's referring to, and that is complete haratzus to say that that is an issue, especially like even if it was a gag and you have a Rav that's giving a hechsher and you have the Aruch HaShulchan who says it's totally fine, and the Baal Tanya who says it's totally fine, and the Taisa Shabbos says it's totally fine, then who are you to have the chutzpah to come and like yell that it's possible? You think that people should be machmir. You could write a tshuva and people could discuss it. That's your
Right.
position. But it's clearly not the case here. That's
But
number one.
More so that it's
Yeah.
not. That's if it's a gag.
In a Hanami, over here it's not an issue
It's
at
not
all.
even
It's
at
all
all.
days.
There's no gag over
And
here.
if I'm not
It's a little
mistaken, Hagoan Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was Litvish, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
we're not the, 'cause
Yeah.
he's very into what the Litvish person say. Oh, and Rav Moshe Feinstein also said that
Yeah.
up to 3 tvachim it could obstruct, it could be in the middle, and it's not an obstruction, as the people he's relying on bringing their sefer in his name. Ironically,
Yeah.
we'll get to
We'll
that.
explain
So
a little more about
and
that soon.
ultimately, what's most reflecting is no one says what he's saying. No paisuk of any esteemed stature said that. I'm not saying about guys today that want to just rattle off things that aren't correct with no rayas. That's not relevant to us. Okay. Point number 2, he's talking about that we're relying that our Tzuras HaPesach doesn't reach the wall. One of the discussions in the Paiskim is that when you have a Tzuras HaPesach, let's say you have one street and you have 2 walls, and now you're cutting off both entrances. The third and the fourth side need to be closed. So you're putting a Tzuras HaPesach there, but does it have to actually reach the wall or not? So there's a discussion about that, and he said that we're going against that, and we're relying on a
Hirchik Menakois.
right, Hirchik Menakois. So he's saying that we're relying on this Karen David, and it's this huge chiddush.
Places where the Eruv of the Brooklyn Eruv didn't, it hit it was connected over the street from they had a wire going from one electric pole to the other one, on top of each one, and over the sidewalk there's nothing. So I asked this Rav, I said, I understand, the sidewalk is not covered. I showed him a picture. So he says, yeah, there's a tshuva in a Karen LaDavid somewhere that's machshevet. There's a tshuva in a Karen LaDavid. I know the tshuva in Karen LaDavid. Itaka says that. You know what the case of the Karen LaDavid was? The case of the Karen LaDavid was that they needed an Eruv, and the government didn't allow for them to put up an Eruv. And in Europe, they used to have to take the chalent. You couldn't stand. The people didn't have everything available in the house. It was a shasat chagadol. There was no way in the world to construct a good Eruv. And so he was saying, and Komin Shitis, he has a tshuva that's 5 pages long, which is a chiddush ladina. It is a chiddush ladina. But he was the Rav in the shtat, he was the Rav in town, and the Rav in the shtat is entitled to have a chiddush. And those who are meshubit to him, and bnei kilasai, are entitled to follow his chiddush. But what does the Karen LaDavid have to do with cases where you could make an Eruv, if you wanted to? What does the Karen LaDavid have to do with the fact that Klal Yisrael Aladairis never had such Eruvin? That there were areas where there was no attempt to even make a tikkun over that portion of it. What does the Karen LaDavid have to do with anything? And if people would know what they're relying on, people wouldn't carry with it either. You can't just pile up kula al gabi kula al gabi kula.
So number 1, he obviously didn't see it for 2 reasons. One, because as Rabbi Kleinman will show you in his own sefer, he didn't bring it when he wrote on artist on Rav Henkin. And 2, if he studied the Karen LaDavid, there's no way anyone would say it's a chiddush. The vast majority of poskim are makel on this, including the Baal Tanya, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Taisa Shabbos, and a whole bunch more, including the Mishna Berurah, which he's misinterpreting. But we'll get to that. So let me start.
we, not so much in his defense, but what the essence trying to argue here is the Mishna Berurah says otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, but that
We'll show you that
that's wrong. But even though
Right.
you can't just, even if the Mishna Berurah said otherwise, you
Right.
can't just dismiss it when you have all these poskim
By the
that
way,
you mentioned plus.
Correct. Furthermore, even in his understanding, the Mishna Berurah is just saying the lachatchili should be machmer.
Right.
It's clear. There's no one that argues. In Ikar Adin, the Mishna Berurah is crystal clear that it's okay. Now, I'll explain. The way we did it is literally l'kol alma, but I'm not gonna. There's the Tzemach Tzedek. There's two amazing chuvas that are very long, Siman Mem and Siman Mem Aleph. If someone wants to actually educate themselves about this whole topic, that's a great place to start. And I'm not going to list out every place, but the vast majority that say it's okay.
I think though,
Yeah.
I need to list Rav Henkin here because we're talking about somebody's credibility. And look, this is the safe. It's called Gvuras Elio. This is the crown and glory of Rabbi Kleinman's publication. It's Shuvas of Hagoan Rav Henkin,
which he
Rebuttal,
published.
which he collected and gave out, and we all owe him a thank you for that. However, it's so fascinating. He's accusing us of doing something that Rav Henkin allowed. And it's obviously chatchila. Rav Henkin said, "Paskinen the kanashal tzuras HaPesach afilu rochak mikoisel shloisha tvachim mahani afilu the ein gad v'pitikre samach l'kana." And yes, in the footnote, he brings that the Mishna Berurah disagrees, or rather not disagrees. So meaning it's a chumrah. I mean, I don't even know how, even according to his understanding of the Mishna Berurah, he went off the rails that we're doing
We'll
something.
get to that, yeah.
Yeah, but it's unbelievable. That's not what the Mishna Berurah is saying, even according to him. But then he says, so again, Rav Henkin is Mekel. He admitted that the Ken David is Mekel. Oh, but he said that the Ken David was only such extenuating
Like circumstances. It was a big
chiddush, and so on. It's unbelievable that what happened over here. He forgot what he wrote, or he chose to ignore it.
I want to also point out the reason why normally if you're having an argument within Torah, you're not going to point out that the guy obviously didn't see it or stretch the truth. But here, because he's alleging these type of claims, we have to show you how credible he is. There's no way he saw the tshuva and learned it because he would never say it's chiddush.
Yeah, well,
That's
didn't mention
indisputable.
it. He didn't mention it here in the
Correct,
footnote.
but even if he saw it later,
and
and
but
furthermore,
even if he saw it later, it's obvious he doesn't. He didn't
understand
read
it.
Yeah. It's not possible to say that it's such a chiddush when he
lists all the poskim there.
Yeah.
There's a whole list. I'm just telling you the main three, but there's a whole list brought there. Now, so the Chomer starts from the Bechor Shar. Bechor Shar and Daf Yud Aleph. Taisvis writes Ipchamayid. The Gemara there is discussing that a tzuras Pesach could help for higher than 20 amas. So, which you can, but the Taisvis is asking, why is it necessary? Take off the top part of the tzuras Pesach, and then you have a lechi from here and a lechi from here, which we call pasich hatzeretz and a mechitza. So then he explains that obviously we're talking about in a place that you need a tzuras Pesach. For instance, that it's wider than 10 amas, because you can't use pasich hatzer for a gap that's wider than 10 amas, or that it's a mavim mefulish, which needs a tzuras Pesach on one side. So the Parsha is saying, why didn't he say that the lechis could be, we're talking about in a case where the lechis are further away from the wall, therefore you need to make it tzuras Pesach. Is there raya that it's an issue? Now he obviously understood on his own that it's an issue because the proof here is very subtle, because if that's the case, why put a third post on the bars? Just push the lechis to the wall if it's talking about a regular case, and does Tosfos have to give every yitzim a call? But that's where the Chomer starts from, and the Bechor Shar says yesh lahachmer because he has a suffix ldin. So it's not that he's telling you he's a mechadish. It's a suffix. He's the first one to mention this. Now today we were actually zeicha to have Tosfos Rebbeinu Peretz, which explicitly states that one of the options are that it was far away from the wall, therefore you needed tzuras Pesach because only a tzuras Pesach could be far away from the wall. So
it's doubtful that the
Bechor Shar would be machmer if he had a Tosfos Rebbeinu Peretz. That's what his suffix was, as Taisus
His
agreeing.
choices and this,
Now, his reasoning that he's bringing,
and it doesn't
there's
have to
three,
be.
right, so there's three reasons that are brought of different ways to understand the Parashah of why it will be an issue. One is Gdi and Bakim. The other is Asi Avidah, the Haigisu, the Haigisum of Ataleh, which is the get. I don't know if we should explain it now, but basically,
It's very complicated.
okay, for those that don't understand, we'll leave it. And the third is that you don't make a Pesach when it's just adjacent from both sides of the wall. It doesn't look like a Pesach, which is how the Chazon Ish and the Mekar Chaim understand it. However, this is all talking about where you have nothing in between the Tzuras HaPesach to the wall. In our Eruv, we did not do that. In our Eruv, we put Pasei Chatzar next to each Tzuras HaPesach to the wall. So there's an additional Pasei Chatzar on each side, so there's no gaps. And in that situation, everyone is moida that that's good. This is brought by the Chekar Halacha already that way, and it's brought by the Konsa Chuvis. But I'll tell you further, it's really what trapped in the Mishna Berurah, and Rav Moshe himself says it explicitly. If you look in Mesarev Moshe, he says it explicitly, but those that don't want to rely on it, if you look in Simon Peites, Erchaim Beis, and his Shuvah Seagate, it's very clear that that's how he's learning it. He's saying that's possibly how the Eshel Avram is learning it. But the issue is having another hecker at the wall, so you need another lechi. The Tzuras HaPesach itself is not going to function as 2 points. One, it's closing off your gap, but it's not going to also give you a hecker at the wall. Now I think it's important that we get to the Mishna Berurah, because this is where they're really coming from. The original, where we heard it from, which we'll get to soon. The Mishna Berurah, read to you inside. There we go. All right, I moved it around before. Let's go back. Okay. The Hechi, this Simon Shin Samach Gimel, Sif Katan Chaf Gimel in the Mishna Berurah. The Hechi Shekavei Tzuras HaPesach L'Mavoi, Das Harbi Me'ak Poiskim, many of the Poiskim, She ain't Tzarech L'Daktik, She Yehei B'Toich Gimel Tvachim L'Chaisal. Tzarech L'Pesach M'chitzik Marahi. Many of the Poiskim say it's not an issue, you don't have to be Medaktik at all, which he's including in the Sharitzin, the Baal Tanya, and others. The Yesh Poiskim, and there are those that say this really the ain't chiluk ben Tzuras HaPesach L'Lechi L'in Yezeh, that there's no difference. In the same way a lechi has to be within 3 tvachim to the wall, the same way a Tzuras HaPesach has to be. So here he's bringing Harbe and Yesh, which is the more Poiskim are saying that it's not an issue. Then he goes Ubeshasat Chak Yesh Lislam Chlahakal, and in Shasat Chak you have to be you should be Soimech and be Mekel. So this is where they're all jumping at. But we'll get to this in a second, even what the Shasat Chak means. Right. But let's continue. The Im Yesh Arba Tvachim in Tzuras HaPesach L'Kaisel, and if it's further, that means 4 Tvachim or greater up to Tel Amas to the wall. Das a Chai Adam, the Tzarech L'Hamid Lechi Etzel L'Kaisel. The Chai Adam holds that you need to add a Lechi at the wall. L'Didi Tzarech Yin Gam Bazeh. It's not so. It's a way of saying you're arguing. Tzarech Yin, you need to be introspective about it. You need to think about it. You need to clarify it, because so it's a form of saying you don't agree. Eli here. I forgot to emphasize that when the Mishna Berurah is writing here, he's saying there it's also tzarech also on this gambazeh, and he's clearly going back and leaving the chumrah of the Bechar Shar in tzarech, which further substantiates what I said, that he's rejecting the Bechar Shar Me'ikar Adin, and is just saying that we should be machmer l'chatchila out of respect to the Bechar Shar. As he explained in Bir Halacha, which we won't get into now because it's longer, but he's clearly being mefakfik on that. He doesn't agree with that. But l'chatchila, bevadei nachin lachush lahachmer. It's definitely appropriate to be careful and be machmer. And then he adds, afilu beracha gimel tfachim in a kaisel, even if it's only 3 tfachim from the wall. Now, when it's 3 tfachim from the wall, there's no other reason to put a lechi according to the Chaya Adam. The reason of putting a lechi at the wall is very simple, as we stated before. Once you have a lechi at the wall, you have a hecker at the wall, and just like Moshe Feinstein held, it wouldn't be an issue. The same thing the Mishna Berurah is learning. Now, there's more to that, because somebody could say, is it that clear? Maybe I could try to kvetch, but could you be medayik that way? But it's clearly what he's saying, because that filu is going on putting a lechi, not that you should put the whole Tzuras HaPesach there. So if he wanted to say to be machmer, he would go back to that. Separately, he already said Shasat Chak there, so it was obvious L'Chatchila. He's giving you here the solution. If you put a Lechi L'Chatchila, you're fine. Now, how do we really know that? So if you go, when he says, V'yesh lismach lahakal b'shas chak, if you go in Sifkat and Yud Zayin, the Sha'ar Tzion, he points to the Shoyel Meshiv and the Rabbi Eger, Tshuva Rabbi Eger. Now, Shoyel Meshiv is saying if you have a Tircha G'doyla Yisera, which is a extra bother, you don't have to be choishes for this. I'll leave that in a drop. I'll get back to what he means. Now, Rabbi Eger, if you learn his Tshuva, he's doiche each time of the Charshar B'Shtei Yadayim. He ends at the second to last paragraph, Ubalav Hachi, without my arguments, Ein Livnois Diuk Lahamti Din Chadash Al Dikto Kal Kazeh. How could you establish such a din, such a small inference, such a diuk? It's clear that he's totally rejecting the B'char Shar. He ends with, in the last paragraph, that there is a Yerushalmi, the smashma, that you want to hecker at the actual wall itself. He rejects that, la'alacha, but he says, b'shasat chak is lismach lahakal. So he is using shasat chak for that. However, that's if you don't have a hecker at the wall. Once you add a lechi at the wall, you have a hecker at the wall. So then he clearly would accept it. And that is clearly what the Mishna Berurah is learning when he says l'chatchila, even by 3 tvachim put a lechi at the wall. So we're being machmer more than the Mishna Berurah. L'chatchila. Now, many have misunderstood this Mishna Berurah. He's not the first one. In theory, you could argue maybe give him a pass, but if he opened the Shoyel Meshiv, and the Shasas Chak is only Tircha Yisera, which is an extra bother, it's clear we're not talking about a typical Shasat Chak that you're saying Nadas Yachid. The Ikar Din is not like the B'char Shar. So to come and make this whole bustle that Erev's puzzle based on that is a chutzpah. Now, I'll point out what they mean by the Tircha Yisera. The Shoyel Meshiv is pointing back to also to Yeshuas Yaakov. But what they're discussing is, unlike what Rabbi Kleinman claimed, that the government didn't let them make any tzuras HaPesachim. That isn't the case. The case is they couldn't get to the wall. Right. The issue is they couldn't get to the wall. They were able to make tzuras HaPesachim. Now, the wall could be a private home of somebody, or the government itself, maybe in some areas they didn't want them putting it on the wall, but typically it could be a private home. And you need to get permission, you need to pay them, they need to agree. But you could go in the other direction, which gives you a lot more work, because instead of using all those walls now, you have to have a tzuras HaPesach running along in the other direction. And that, when all the Paiskim are bringing regarding this din, im efsher, that is exactly what they mean. That, not that you should go in the other direction, if you can't get to the wall. They're not telling you go to the other direction and make tzuras HaPesachim in the other way, which is a Tircha Yisera. And the reason is because if you look in the Tshuvas and you understand it, they're rejecting the B'char Shar, and it's more out of respect that they're telling you to, do it.
And they don't want to just...
In short, if you're coming to establish a tzuras HaPesach, Baal Tanya had the broad shoulders, don't worry about it at all, but
also mentions the minig.
Correct.
That the minig. So
and totally
we're not
rejects
the first
it.
one. And totally,
yeah. But and also a good point to make here is he's telling us that it's against the minig. He's gonna say that the Baal Tanya didn't know about the minig, right? Like he's testifying to us about the minig separately. There's many Eruv in America that are done this way. It's not exclusive to our Eruv at all. But the point I'm getting at is that people were out of respect. If you're coming to set up your tzuras HaPesach and you could go to the wall, it doesn't take much of a difference. Like, don't be a mechutzav and disregard the B'char Shar out of respect. They're not taking him ikar din. I think it's an important point to bring out, even though it doesn't apply to us. We were machmer nevertheless. But it just shows you that people don't know how to read. Don't know how to read halachic text.
Our Rav probably would have been Mekel.
Our Rav wanted a lechi.
Well,
not both. We added on our own.
So we added on both sides.
Right. Two lechis.
Yeah. So that's called
pasach, which makes it l'choladeis. Because it's a community Eruv, and we wanted to add chomers when we could.
Even if he wanted a lechi.
We added many chomers on our
We added chomers there. But to say, you're saying maybe he gets a pass because others learned the Mishna Berurah. Yeah, but the others didn't get up and pontificate. And he
doesn't get he doesn't get a pass in his behavior. I'm just saying, for this misunderstanding, he's not the first one to make that mistake. It's just, you need to study the topic, understand it, and then it makes perfect sense. That's why the Mishna Berurah is saying it. You already addressed that. Now, that is with the Hirchik. Now we have the Flatbush Eruv, the dress.
You want to do that?
Well, we-
I think we'll wait with the Flatbush Eruv. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think there's another thing. The fact that he claims to be, we're going to talk about how there's no question that he is not able to remove himself from his bias. He has a bias against everybody. There's nothing to talk about, and he says it himself. We're not for it. Us
Right.
yeshiva litvish guy because of Moshe. But by the way, he doesn't even know Moshe.
doesn't know. Well, right here on this issue, Moshe is the one that's makel.
Once
You have a lechi, he actually on the B'char Shar of being away from the wall with any lechis, he's machmer.
Right.
He learns like the B'char Shar, but once you have a lechi,
and
he has no
Blita
problem.
as well, and the Blita as well,
Both of them are recorded
both
according to
of them
Moshe.
Right.
And both of he also called Harav Henkin the Mar the Asura.
Right.
So he's coming into this chiddush when the majority of the poskim say that it's okay. And now he didn't have to go study the topic that well. He could have just opened the Mishna Berurah where he says Harvim and a poskim, and he in the footnotes he references to a lot of them. He didn't take the time to do any basic research. There's also a bunch of poskim brought in the Karel David, including Rabbi Kiva Eger, as a makel.
Right.
And he's just looking for issues. He's not being honest to you because if he can't open this Shulchan Aruch and read a sif, then he shouldn't call himself a rabbi.
And beyond that, he doesn't even. He mentioned in this video that maybe it can make dalsis, and they can make dalsis because it's no big deal. They made it in London. We'll get to that. They made it in London. All this is all narishkeit. And what's he basically saying? Go, make dalsis, and even Moshe would agree to that.
There's only one way to have an Eruv in Flatbush, according to L'chol HaDeis. And that is if there would be something called delusis, which Rav Moshe writes. Rav Moshe says if you had delusis, if there were doors made at the entrance, if you will, to the city, or the entrance to areas of the Rosh Hashanah, if you would close off portions of the Rosh Hashanah with delusis, with doors that close. Shaila, do they have to close every night? Do they have to be royal? It's a Shaila in Shulchan Aruch. That technically would be a solution. They did that in London. In London, they have delusis. In the city of London, they have delusis, and they close up traffic at times, and they close the delusis too. You know, with Afghanistan, all you do is you get a yellow jacket and a shtickle hat, and you put on a light that goes azay, and Eilam Gailam, and you close your delusis for a minute. Yeah. That would technically, maybe Rav Moshe would have been happy with that. I don't know.
It's unbelievable. You're machme according to Rav Moshe, and you don't know that Rav Moshe holds that dalsis will not help. We have to stress this.
He didn't understand the difference between Rosh Hashanah and the Irais
and the Karmelis and the Torah. Right.
That's another.
He probably doesn't even know there's a
many
Karmelis
people. Yeah. Even though there's 3 Rishuyas.
Yeah.
There is. A Karmelis means that it could go either way. It's not defined as one Rishus. It could become a Rishus Yachid when there's no Rabbim, and it becomes a Rishus Rabbim when the Rabbim come through that. It's not Rishus Rabbim.
There's a nuance
so that's what it's like. So
right.
in a Torah, it's not either Rishus Yachid or Rishus Rabbim. That's what it means, and it's much more chamer.
Right. So in Simon Kif Lamed Tes,
it's a chiddush. They need dalsis at all in the Karmelis when
That's a right. We're not going to get too much into that. Mishkas Yankiv and Moshe and Reb Aaron following Mishkas Yankiv, but we'll leave that alone. But in any case, they all have little nuances in what
it doesn't become a Rishus Yachid when there's no Rabbim there. So to clarify, it's just not a Rishus Rabbim only when the Rabbim come through it at that moment. It can become a Rishus Rabbim.
At that moment,
either way, it's not. It's stuck in the middle.
And Moshe was talking about the bridges in Manhattan, whatever, and that's in Simon Kif Lamed Tes, Anaf Gimel and Anaf Dalet. You could all go look it up. I don't know if you're going to want to, because it's one of Rav Moshe's brilliant shuvas is extremely entailing and very, very long. You have to really know the sugya, but whatever. And over there, Rav Moshe saw the Karmelis Minatayre. Rav Moshe declares maybe yes, dalsis nilus balayla or not. Maybe it is or not. And he, Rabbi Kleinman, just said, oh, but on Shulchan Aruch, and it says Riyas nilus not. It's unbelievable. He doesn't know what he just doesn't know.
We're not gonna expand a lot on Rav Moshe. We'll put a link to his blog where he discussed it at length. But I'll tell you this: Rav Moshe himself writes clearly in Orach Chaim Hey Simach Ches that if there are 3 walls around Brooklyn, that will be different. And it's a fact that they're there, and that's why we maintain that according to Rav Moshe, there is no Rishus Ram Deiraisa in Brooklyn, and there's no problem with our Eruv according to Rav Moshe.
So exactly so. So in other words,
Yeah.
we believe you don't need according to the Moshe
At all.
because it's Rishus Hayachim, but because of the mechitzas. But these guys
Right.
are not agreeing with us. They hold the Moshe holds it is a Rishus Ram. Well, if it's a Rishus Ram, go look, as I said, in Kiflamet Test and Have Gimel and Dal. If it's a Rishus Ram and not Torah, the Moshe holds has to be Dalsis Nilas Balayla every single night. So,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? You
To
don't
be
even
fair,
know the basics.
reason they think it's a Rishus Ram Deiraisa is from Kol Kairas. They didn't study the Chuvas,
Right.
so they wouldn't know about the Dalsis either.
They wouldn't know
The
about-
Sada Shaker.
Right.
You know, they don't know his
Yeah.
physician.
And they definitely
at all.
wouldn't know some Kiflam test.
Correct.
Yeah. So whatever. Anyway, this is just to show you that all this,
I
Dalsis
think-
talk is
right.
narishkeit.
I think we should address Flatbush too, because I think it will help.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
go
let's
ahead.
address Flatbush while we're at
Yeah.
it. So first thing, he said that Flatbush, that he reached out to the Flatbush Eruv, the person in charge of the Flatbush Eruv is Rabbi Kenneth Ullman, and I reached out to him to hear what really happened. But he reached out to them, and they warned him and threatened him that they're going to publicize these pictures of the train tracks, because they're using the train tracks as their fourth mechitza, not for the entire side. It's not part of Maloyai. And the ldin called and the edge of the ceiling comes down and closes down that pirtza. So they're using the edge of the train tracks. He's saying that 9 years ago, when de Blasio, they were doing construction during his term, they put a metal sheet in the middle, and it's not a tefach thick. Well, a tefach thick, and he says that's choladeis. Why? Because Rabbi Kiva Eger says it needs to be at least a tefach thick, and no one's chaylik. Even though Rabbi Moshe, the Chazan Ish, says that the minig ha'olam is, nevertheless, it's an issue.
So around 8, 9, 10 years ago, the mayor of New York, if I'm not mistaken, at the time it was Bill de Blasio, may he rest. He decided that he doesn't like an Eruv, so he decided to do construction on the train tracks. What does construction do? When you do construction on the train tracks, when he did construction, they put metal sheets underneath the platform of the train tracks for support or whatever it was. And ostensibly what happened by creating that sheet, basically they ruined the pitikra. Why do you ruin the pitikra? The reason why you ruin the pitikra is threefold. Number one, shitas hataisvis, and other Rishayim, and it's gebrach berb kiveger lahalach and Shulchan Aruch. And there's no one who's chaylik on it overtly in the Mefarshim and Shulchan Aruch. There's a Chazan Ish who says maybe the minig ha'olam is not like that, but the shita of Rishayim is that in order to have a pitikra, it has to have a tefach of thickness. Tefach is minimum 3 inches. This metal doesn't have a tefach of thickness. Problem number one. Problem number two is that the metal is not regular metal, it's corrugated metal. Corrugated metal is not flat, it's not straight, it's not shava. It goes up and down. Taisvis and Erevin, and the Rosh, and the Ritva, Beli Chaylik, without any Chaylik, also brought in Reb Kiveger, and here the Chazon Ish doesn't dispute this. All right, and in order to have a pitikra, the peh has to be shava, has to be straight. This peh is not shava. And the third issue, in many places, the metal is not flat, but it goes up on a slant to collect debris. This is Mefurish, Rishayim again, in Halakha and the Paiskim, that in order for a pitikra to work, it can't be on a slant, it has to be perfect, it has to be straight. You can declare if it means perfectly straight, imperceptible differences probably don't make a difference. But when you have a large slant, there's nothing to talk about. And so the train tracks didn't have a pitikra. This was the case for many years.
So, number one, the Chazon Ish does not say the minig ha'olam is not. But if he did, meaning he didn't say the minig ha'olam is to be making on this, but if he did, that would be, for anyone familiar with halacha, that would be enough for you to talk. That's how the minig is kadei halacha. When the price can bring that the minig ha'olam, that is the halacha. Certainly, Rav Moshe held that way for one that's good. That's familiar with his chuvas. He brought it regarding Shishniru, but no familiarity with halacha. Second of all, the Chazon Ish says no such thing. The Chazon Ish says, "I did loy matzasi shum paisik hamevi tnaizeh." I'm quoting from memory. I could be off by a word, but that's what it is, and we will put a PDF with the Rav Hamachshir. He found no paisik that brings this, and I could assure you that the Chazon Ish saw Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Now, he doesn't know how to read a halachic text. Rabbi Akiva Eiger adds at the end of what he's talking there that Taisus Gam, the second point, that Taisus also brought that it needs to be a tefach thick, that's how it's mashma in Rashi. He doesn't say whether we paskin that way or not, whether it's required. It's an additional point. It's in his agas. He's clearly not passing it that way, and no one else brought it. So there's 2 points here. Number one, he decided that Rabbi Akiva Eiger passing that way. He didn't, as the Chazon Ish himself could attest to you. He didn't miss it. Number two, even if the Rabbi Akiva Eiger did paskin that way, that doesn't mean that everyone agrees, because all the Noisei Kelim and the Shulchan Aruch are not bringing that tonight. If they felt that you had to have it a tefach thick, they would tell you. And that shows a lack of understanding halachic text. There is a discussion, for instance, brought in many places, where if the Yeshem that comes after the stam that doesn't directly mention otherwise, how strong the Yeshem is, and no one says that means the stam agrees. It's brought by Shishim Ribu. It's brought all over as a different klali halacha, but he's clearly showing no proper knowledge of reading and dissecting halachic text.
That is the pshat in the Chazon Ish by saying that.
No, he's saying that he didn't. Correct, but I'm saying that he's learning, obviously, that Rabbi Akiva Eiger is not paskening that way.
Yeah.
But even if he did, it wouldn't be. Now, the Chazon Ish is saying that he didn't see it any place, and that means that no one paskened that way. We don't name it on halacha.
Right.
So that's entirely ridiculous.
That's the way the Chazon Ish uses these points.
Now, the second point he made, which is that it's b'shipua, and he that's l'chaladeis not okay. Now, first of all, Rabbi Kenneth told me that it's not b'shipua, which I'll elaborate more on what he said. But if it was, it's not less. There's no. You can't say that no one agrees. The Taz explicitly says in Shulchan Aruch that you could have it b'shipua, as does the Nachlas Tzvi. Now, yes, the majority of Acharonim do not agree with the Taz, and we definitely wouldn't be saimich on that if our Rav Hamachshir wouldn't want us to be saimich on that. But you can't come and say that less man d'chaylik, and it's a figment of his imagination, because I would accept Rav Kenneth's Chesed Kashrus over his. He also says that there's pekimus there. Most places don't bring pekimus, some do. I don't know if that's correct. I didn't go out there and look at it. However, back to the point where he called them, got sidetracked to the halacha, he called them and he threatened that they're going to take down the Eruv, and they said the Eruv is down, and then suddenly, right before Shabbos, again, another email went out that they fixed the Eruv, and he's like making a joke, how could you fix a ticker, and you fixed the train tracks now? What are you talking about? And then he spoke to another Rav, and the other Rav told him that this stirs up Pesachim, and then he made his whole conspiracy theory. So first of all,
it's like a separate area.
Yeah, we'll get to what the other Rav said.
Shmuel, if I had an obligation, I asked my Rebbe if I had an obligation to be more proactive about it. And he asked me, does anybody in your shul carry? And I said, no. So he says, okay. So, be my dia other Rabbanim, and with that, you're Yaitza. And that's what I did. Fine. We were ma'arer those who are in charge of the Eruv, or the Rabbanim who purportedly support it. We didn't hear back. A little while ago, again, the construction over there was taken down, finished, whatever it was. But what we didn't realize is that it had moved to a different part of the tracks. And around a month and a half ago, Rabbi Reisman, to his credit, decided that something has to be done. There's no pitikra, it hasn't been there for years. And so he reached out to the ones who are in charge of the Eruv. We took pictures, and he said, look, someone's got to say something. Either you say something to your people, you send out an email. Either you say something, or I'm going to have to say something, but if I say it, I'm going to send out the pictures. People will see it. So they said something. They sent out an email that the Eruv is down. Fine. Please don't send out the pictures. The pictures weren't sent out. Fair enough. Before Shabbos, an email went out. Moments before Shabbos, a few hours later, the Eruv is fixed. I don't know what that means. Erev is fixed. Erev couldn't be fixed. It sounded funny. So I found out later, and this I confirmed with a Rav who is a Chassidish Rav, who was telling his Balabatim for years that there's a makom to be Samech on an Erev in Flatbush. He felt he wasn't Meshubah to Rav Moshe. He said he found out that that's not the border of the Flatbush Eruv. That's not the border. It's not where the Flatbush Eruv is. The Flatbush Eruv uses other strings, other tzuras HaPesach that have been constructed. They connect to the Boro Park Eruv. That's not where the Flatbush Eruv is. So what happened on that Erev Shabbos? Why did they first put out an email and then put out an email the other way, moments to Shabbos? The reason is because the one who's the Rav who's supposed to be on top of the Eruv, he himself didn't know what the borders of the Eruv was. So I want to tell you, I don't know where the borders of the Flatbush Eruv is. I don't know. But I know one thing. If the ones who are overseeing the Flatbush Eruv don't know where the borders of the Flatbush Eruv is, if the goalposts move based on problems that are found, I think in halacha you lose a cheskes kashrus.
First of all, Rabbi Kenneth never said the Eruv was down because of their email. He only saw their email after Shabbos. He said the Eruv was down for a different issue, and he fixed that issue. He only saw their email after Shabbos. Now, what the other Rav told him, that that area is backed up by an additional Eruv, why would Rabbi Kenneth have to know about that? It's not his Eruv. Does he have to know the Brooklyn Eruv's boundaries that backs him up? He's the Rav Hamachshir of his Eruv, the Flatbush Eruv, and that's what he knows. So what he's doing and trying to connect this whole conspiracy theory is just a figment of his imagination. They never said they're going to take it down. He decided that both of them need to talk. He has his agenda here.
He's jumping to conclusions because he wants to undermine, and that's what he's doing.
As far as the Shipua,
pieces together.
Rabbi Kenneth went to look, and he said he didn't see any Shipua, and he responded to the email, and he said, I don't see it. Would you like to meet me there? Could you give me pictures? What are you talking about? And he said he's busy. They're going to Israel, whatever. Chilul Shabbos for everyone, but they were very busy, and they never got back, and then they made this video. So just to show you what we're dealing with. And additionally, I'll illustrate again that this was going on for 9 years with the Flatbush Eruv, and he's making it sound like because no one in his community was doing it, the Rav told him, it was carrying there, his Rav told him that he shouldn't talk, but then why is he talking it out publicly? He's
what happened now?
He's full of it. And separately, if you really care that much, and you come in L'Shem Shemayim, there's not that large of an area that they're using the train tracks. It's a few $1,000s to switch your Tzuras HaPesach. If you really bother him that much, 9 years people are carrying him, why not just fundraise some money and go over? Rabbi Kenneth is a nice guy. He'd be more than happy to work with them and sponsor to add Tzuras HaPesach. I'm sure he'd be happy. That's if he cared. That's what he would do. But he obviously doesn't care. He's looking for trouble.
Yeah. All right. Let's get a little background of why we have to sit here and rebuttal this shtiyot, and which I hope you see already. Stories, many figments of imagination, and halacha, haratzus. The simple doesn't know what he's talking about. But let's go. Let's give a little background and shed some light on what's really going on over here. There was a businessman who served on our board and pledged financial support for the Eruv. He was never involved, though, in halachic matters, as these were outside his purview and expertise. Unfortunately, he failed to honor his financial commitments, and as a result, he was removed from the board. Regrettably, his response was marked by highly irresponsible conduct. He unlawfully took control of our Twitter account and publicly announced that the Eruv was operational, when in fact it was down. Baruch Hashem, we were able to repair the Eruv in time and regain control of the account. We subsequently sought to resolve this matter through Bezdin. He refused to appear, and a misarev was issued against him by the Bezdin of Mishna Berurah and Monsey. Thereafter, this misarev ldin retained someone to inspect the Eruv in search of alleged deficiencies, providing him with a map that was purported to represent the Eruv's boundaries.
I'll interject here that the misarev ldin doesn't have much understanding within halacha, but he did understand who to approach because he's heard us discuss. Because one of the things we do is we're trying to help and we write when people we feel our writing haratzus will write rebuttals, and we express that these guys are major
Especially
haratzus
that
are
were
making
affecting-
issues.
affecting
Yeah, they're
Erev.
out there. They turned it into a business where the same guy that's a Pesach is working with another guy that they're going to actually do the upgrades, and they're going to many Erevin that were established by major Pesach, including Erevin that got the okay for what they're relying on from Rav Moshe Feinstein B'chayav, and they're trying to tell them that it's no good. Erevin that were made under Rav Shimon Eider, which he was a Talmud of Rav Moshe. Coming, everything is no good. Everything is puzzle. And here we got to spend 100,000, 200,000 to upgrade it to our standard. So he knew who to approach if he's looking for trouble. And there's some bad blood because we've written against them because we feel they're writing haratzus. So it was a perfect scenario. Give them money. They like making these issues anyways. And
And by the way, these people, if you want to know, you could look it up. We've given out a countries against them regarding Shias, and there was another one written about the Chazon Ish. They simply totally misunderstood.
Hagoan
Rosner.
Now, just it's not one little point about the Chazon Ish. This is like they try to take the whole main heter of the Chazon Ish and they totally distorted it with some chiddush of theirs that it would be against everybody. And the whole thing was wrong with Chilasa at Seifa, and as a Rosenwald called for the Verleim in a Chaynim.
Right.
Nothing
it's on
was
my
right.
blog, by the way, as well.
It was printed in ISO. This is a few years ago. This was before this.
There's no question.
Went and contacted them.
And they're the ones.
Yeah.
And they're the ones. All right, I'll finish, and they're actually the ones. You'll see exactly what happened over here. So this mesarev ldin went and shared these urim with other rabbanim. Now this is the 45 things that Rabbi Kleinman claims were wrong. These are what these, Amoritz telling another Amoritz.
Very important to point out that it was never sent to us by them.
Right.
It took months till it got to us. So if they cared about your Shemayim and L'Mashem Shemayim, all their nonsense, then why didn't they claim there's all these pirtza people are carrying and there's Chilul Shabbos? Why didn't they tell us immediately?
Yeah, never mind speak to Harav.
Rav Hamachshir, no, of course not.
Yeah,
because he's a Yid in Williamsburg.
Yeah, a Yid in Williamsburg. Yeah, he's a Yid in Williamsburg.
He's Michut Safar. Yeah.
Safar, literally. They're Yid in Flatbush.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. So this mesarev ldin, he went and shared his urim with other rabbanim, along with a donation, of course, as this is his modus operandi, trying to buy everyone with his money. This is the so-called map that Rabbi Kleinman claimed was given to him and was the boundaries of the Brooklyn Eruv. Eventually, his map made it to us. We found out about it. And our Rav Hamachshir went over every inch of the Eruv again, despite having done his yearly check just a few months earlier. What he saw was simple haratzus and based on wrong boundaries, and they wrote a letter stating as such, and the matter was laid to rest. Let's give an example of a
So we spoke a little bit about Gaga Boilet. So there was an area that they said they marked on the map that they gave us that this is Gaga Boilet, therefore it's puzzle. The idea is if, let's say, you have a mechitza, and you have, as we discussed before, the roof of the house overlaps the mechitza, and if it's not nikaris, then the mechitza doesn't continue. Say this is the edge of the roof, and underneath here we have a mechitza, underneath this table.
Like this.
Right, so the table's coming over the mechitza. The mechitza's here, and the table's coming over. And the mechitzas are not nikar, so they don't continue. Now, aside from
if you're standing up on top,
you're standing on the table. This is our floor.
The mechitzas below that.
Right, since they're not nikaris, then you're not going to say good asik, and you're not going to have mechitzas. Now, aside from the fact that it wasn't actually in a nikaris according to most places, including definitely Rav Moshe, but they don't understand that. But let's leave that aside.
Right.
There was an actual mechitza on top, 10 tvachim high, in front of their face. It was like 50 inches, like beyond comprehension. There's a mechitza right in front of your face.
Yeah, you're standing in a mukaf, and you're saying that you don't see the mechitzas below.
There was so
How
many.
idiotic is this? And,
there was,
and this is what Rabbi Kleinman. I'm not sure. Did he hold it that this was l'chaladeis or not? I'm not sure. The way. With his knowledge, I wouldn't be surprised if it's l'chaladeis.
Well, they know more than him, and they made this mistake.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
not that it says much, but
yeah. And by the way, all his stories that he went and looked, it's questionable. He probably is just relying on them.
Yeah, that's probably.
Yeah, because his thing also about the water and so on and so.
You see, he said he saw the camel.
Yeah,
It sounds like a Baldimian. Let's put it
most
that
of
way.
these.
He also says that the Flatbush Eruv told him that they're taking it down because of him.
Right. Most of
He's
these
not,
things are not us anyway.
not-
They're not
correct.
They don't
but
have
it's not the point. We went
exactly.
We went over every point to
Every
see.
point, exactly.
Even if
Our
it's
role,
no,
'cause
because separately we wanted to see like what are these mechutzafim doing? Let's have some fun.
Exactly.
So we have a whole bunch of that, and maybe we'll do a separate video on that one day more on haratzus. But
I just want to say though, all right, so it's obvious our Rav is a little different over here because he took it seriously. He went to look and whatever. But again, he went to look, he saw all the Erudim that they claim. He gave out a letter that it's either haratzus or it's not our Eruv. And let's continue what happened. At the OU Eruv conference this year, I personally spoke with an individual who was paid to seek out problems with the Brooklyn Eruv. I informed him that it was in effect he was acting in opposition to our Rav, and that the map he had been given did not reflect the actual boundaries of our Eruv. He appeared remorseful and mentioned that the same mesarev ldin owed him money for the inspection he did.
yeah,
Typical. So through a mutual contract, Ravelli over here reached out to him and entered into discussions regarding a possible letter of retraction. At the outset, he agreed, and we were in the process of refining the language of the letter. However, he then abruptly ceased all communication. It appears that once the mesarev ldin settled his outstanding financial obligation, the matter came to immediate halt.
probably gave him more than just his obligation.
It was a crisis for him. He needed to actually cough up the money. Well, furthermore, Rabbi Kleinman stated that he received the map from someone who was on the inside, which must in fact refer to his being approached by this mesarev ldin. One can only speculate as to why Rabbi Kleinman chose to rely on such a source or to act as a vehicle for his agenda.
And you could also
no one else even would have entertained. No one would have lied. No one would have entertained.
No, but he's saying the two people. We know our board is 3 people. He was the only guy that's making issues. We know exactly who he is, and is looking to make these problems. He didn't speak to anybody else on our board that's involved.
Right. And Rabbi Kleinman has also claimed that he consulted with a Rav in Boro Park who provides a hechsher for the Brooklyn area, and that this Rav validated the maps in question. This claim is entirely incorrect. No Rav in Boro Park runs a hechsher on the Brooklyn area, and consequently, no such Rav could validate any map purporting to represent its boundaries.
I think we should just give a little bit because there's always a kernel of truth to everything, and then this is what he does. So let's tell you what actually is happened. There is a
Rav is
no, that's who it is. We're not here.
Meaning
what happened? Like
what happened?
I'm going to show you how he takes a story. There is a Rav who was going around to look at the Eruv with us. One of the Ravs that endorsed our Eruv, many are one that endorsed it. He was not on the hechsher, and he was looking to be added to the hechsher. We were happy to do that, and we were taking him around, and he had the problem of hirchik, the Tzuras HaPesach being hirchik from the kaisel, which we discussed, which is where he got the idea of the Karen David. Rabbi Kleinman. This is who he spoke with.
And why did we tell that Rav, the Karen David? Because in his community, the Karen David is extremely important.
It's kind of like the Val Tanya in the Chabad community.
Right.
So at the moment in the car, I told him what I said here about this issue, plus more. And he wasn't familiar with the tshuvas and the other arguments, but it was on, allegachas. And at the time, he told us, look, you might be right according to halacha, but Rav has shimush and Rav has to decide. So, first of all, it's a little peculiar because it's the Rav that decided who's the Rav Hamachshir, but it got contentious. In hindsight, perhaps I shouldn't have discussed it in the car. I should have just told him I'll write to you. Maybe on the moment, me telling that they made him feel that he didn't have what to answer, and whatever. It got contentious. I left it with him. Look, I'll write to you. I'm talking to you in the car. You don't get a chance to see it. You can't verify what I'm saying. Let me write it to you. You look at it, and then we'll talk. So I wrote him a detailed tshuva, about 6 pages, explaining the main points with Meir Mekaymis, a lot more than I discussed here. And he never answered me. He never got back to me. But he did start venting to others that he had an issue with the Eruv that it's not lechatchila according to the Mishna Berurah. He never said it's puzzle. It's just a figment of Rabbi Kleinman.
we
And
know
he
for a
technically, if you
fact
look,
he-
that he didn't say that guy said it's puzzle that Rav.
Right.
He left that out because that hurts his argument. So he's like, he told me he wanted his name removed. Well, it's not an entire lie. He did tell us that he wants his name removed, and I responded, okay, since there's all these different rumors of what you were saying, this is going back over a year ago when it initially happened. Let's you write what your issue with this Eruv is. Our Rav Hamachshir, Yankel Zayd will write his position. We'll make sure that it's not, you'll look it over. We're being respectful. There's no reason to blow things up. And let the people know what your issue is. And, Yiruam v'yishvatu, kachi dakar shel Torah. At that point, the Rav said, and I have it in writing, in an email, to just leave his name on. So, and since then, he's never told us to take it off. If he asked us to take it off, we'd be more than happy to take it off, and we'll write, we're going to follow it.
I think it's just
I just wanna
ridiculous
point out.
to think otherwise. Like
They want to believe that this Rav is on it for all this time, and he wants it off, and he didn't just write and tell people, let them know,
Exactly.
and he thinks it's possible according to Rabbi Kleinman. So is he also a chayte machlas rabbim?
Yeah, by not.
Are you meant to believe that?
Yeah.
One, that we wouldn't take it off if he insisted we take his name off, and two, that if we did that, he wouldn't just write a letter on his own, and he needs Rabbi Kleinman a year later to come and to publicize it in his name in this way. It's like a joke.
Yeah.
What you have here is that he did hear something from him. I wasn't in the conversation. And as a mecharcher, if he wants to use it, he jumped at it.
Yeah,
But
not only
he's
that,
glad-
that Rav definitely didn't tell him it's possible.
He doesn't maintain that. No, he just
Right.
maintains that according to the Mishna
Mishna
Berurah,
Berurah.
lechatchila,
Right.
you should be machmer.
Right, and
That's
he
what he's
misunderstood
saying.
the Mishna Berurah too.
In our
But,
opinion, he's
yeah.
entitled to his opinion. I'm not
No,
here
I
to...
I don't think it's a question.
I agree.
There's
But
no-
my
it's not
point being
question.
is that even then,
No
it's not...
one. I hope the dear listeners will
Right.
look in the Mishna Berurah and see how correct we are. This is a.
It's
yeah.
Also, you need a raya because there's so many
And
that have already
right.
said that
And never
once you have
mind that we
two,
made
for
pasuk
sure,
kotzer.
then it's
Yeah,
the
pasuk
chaladeus,
kotzer is
alecha
what-
lahavi raya. But
Yeah.
separately, Lu Yitzur, that he was correct in the Mishna Berurah. You have the Balatanya, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Henkin, the Aruch HaShulchan, and the Tais of Shabbos, all are saying it's fine. And there's, according to them, the Mishna Berurah is saying yesh lahachmer l'chatchila. Is that a reason to go, and allege that Eruv is puzzle and to make all this noise?
And definitely not with two passing.
Correct. I
Yeah.
think it's fine. But I'm saying Lo Yitzur, they were right.
Yeah.
Either way, the Mishna Berurah is clearly
Right.
the Iker Adin being
Right.
shoylel the Charshar. You
Yeah,
can't read
right.
it otherwise.
Right.
What they didn't chop is that once you put a lechi, it's lechatchila. But
lechatchila,
let's say, and
yeah.
separately, that the Shas Chak is tirchi yisera. Leave that all aside.
One lechi.
Correct.
One lechi. Not
But
pass.
even no, the Shas Chak is when you have nothing.
Nothing.
There,
Right.
it's tirchi yisera. Leave that all aside. Let's say it was full Shas Chak, but you have all the other pricing are saying it's lechatchila. And the Mishna Berurah is learning Ikar Adin, it's fine. What's the noise about that? You're like yelling. Another Rav is not entitled. Like it's beyond comprehension. It just doesn't.
The other Rav is more Talmud Chacham. He knows he's wrong, but at least he knows. But at the minimum, he's not going to go around screaming that it's possible, and he's
Yeah.
not. And I know
he has
he's
some,
not answering people.
No, he's not.
100%.
He has some credibility that he's
Yeah.
not going to go and say something.
Yeah,
Anyways, let's leave.
Anyway,
We'll
so
have to,
it's also, this is important to speak about. Rabbi Kleinman, he appears incredulous that we do not reveal the precise boundaries of Brooklyn Eruv to Rabbanim and Flatbush. He made it like the Rabbanim and Flatbush not to show it to them. Like it's just crazy. It's like what kind of why not show it to them? I mean, all right, the other people maybe they'd rip it, but Rabbanim, well. Dear listener, even when Rabbanim themselves refrain from harming the Eruv, I personally know of cases where they informed individuals who deliberately cut or damaged the Eruv. This is not unique to our community Eruv, to the Brooklyn Eruv. The Williamsburg Eruv similarly withholds its boundaries precisely to safeguard the mitzvah and prevent deliberate harm. Yet Rabbi Kleinman portrays this prudent practice as a defect. Let me just say this. I know for a fact there was a Rav, and there's more. I know there was a few Rabbanim involved. They definitely told Yinga Light to go and cut. This is a very contentious issue, Erevin. And in Tofshin Lamed Ches, Lamites, the Flatbush Eruv, was ripped because Rabbanim gave it over to certain people that they could and should rip. This was not, a hidden Eruv or an Eruv that's hidden. Like we said, like I just said, Williamsburg, same issues.
Flatbush Eruv doesn't either give their
And the
boundaries,
Flatbush doesn't
and we
either
could, I guess,
give-
we could address now the Sephardic Eruv.
Yeah.
So
well, I
he's-
just
he-
want to say, historically, there were other Eruv as well that didn't give
Correct.
out, which you'll have
So the
to wait for.
Sephardic Eruv, he says that the Rav Hamachshir is all of a shalom on the website. First of all, they don't need to update their website for him, and had he done a little more research, he would know who's the Rav that's behind it.
Yeah.
And frankly, they don't have to answer themselves to him. But he also says that there's no Sephardic Eruv. They looked around, it doesn't exist. So you're meant to believe that it's a phantom Eruv, that the whole Eruv doesn't exist. Just to give you an idea how incredulous his claims are with no proof. Just makes claims based on his imagination. And frankly, if he actually went around based on the knowledge he's shown here, he wouldn't be able to find an Eruv if it hit him on the head. And I would refer back to the
Yeah.
end of his video. He says that someone came and asked him a question, if his landlord wants him to leave from his house in 9 months, and the guy said, "But din the machos dina, and you can stay for longer." And he's like, "The guy learned 4 words, and he thinks he knows the halachas." Well, let me say, you don't know Erevin any better than him. You're looking in the mirror that he knows Choshen Mishpat.
Yeah. What's very ironically, we somewhat owe Rabbi Kleinman some gratitude by choosing to air his objections publicly. He has forced into the open the kinds of claims that are usually just like whispered quietly and without accountability. This has given us the opportunity to respond directly, to demonstrate the soundness of our air, the seriousness of its supervision, and the meticulous care with which it is maintained, and to show in full view how little substance lies behind these allegations.
I would add that part of the issue is, and we've had people in the past, they come over to us, this Rav of this shul in Flatbush or that Rav says that, and I don't have what they actually said, and how am I meant to dispute what they said if I don't have it in writing or in audio? And then if they're contacted again, they don't want to get involved. They just rattle, people that have an issue with Erev. So I think this should serve as an example. Here's one of these Rabbanim that they were quoting is coming out and putting it on video. He did his prep work. He knows, and he's putting it out publicly. And you'll see how he literally does not know the Indian. And you could use the same example for the others that speak.
And I want to say this before we go further. I think we're demonstrating that we are serious about Erevin. We're serious in the regarding halakhic issues. We've actually spent time, learned it, and I want to make a claim here that there's probably not another Erev that has someone who actually built it and knows Hilchos Erevin. Harav Elia over here built the Erev, and I challenge you to find. Most builders don't know anything. Most Rabbanim know very little. So,
I would interject that I appreciate the compliment, but I would interject that the main point is our Rav Hamachshir is a real expert.
Now, that was my next thing. Our Rav Hamachshir really knows Hilchos Erevin. We were astounded when every time we spoke to him. But again, we don't do anything without him. He has to sign off on everything. And the fact is that instead of gratitude for the type of Erev we built and the people behind it, this is what we're getting from people who are amaratzen in Hilchos Erevin and the facts. They don't know what they're talking about, and their history and everything else is also one big mess. Right. A few little things. Let's clean up some things he threw out. Rav Henkin. I don't want to get too much into this because you can look on my blog, but I mentioned before he didn't know Rav Henkin about Herchik, or chose to ignore it, probably forgot and whatever. But
he wanted to forget.
He wanted to forget, right? However, I will say that he made a big deal about it, starting off his video that Rav Henkin was first like here, back and forth, and then at the end he went with Rav Moshe. I wanted to say before we even explain it that people, the viewers should understand how important Rav Henkin is to him. Besides that, he wrote, he gave out his tshuvas. Rav Henkin to the yeshiva Litvische Welt, and never mind for the Chassidim as well, was a giant of a posek, and it's very troubling to people like Rabbi Kleinman that Rav Henkin seems to be a loose cannon when it comes to Hilchos Erev. He seems to be more pro than otherwise, and definitely doesn't hold as an issue of Shusharam, which you can see on my blog. I go through it. Rabbi Kleinman simply missed that. Clearly missed that Rav Henkin, and two things. One is Rav Henkin says at the end of the Eidus Yisrael letter, he writes over there, which was added after 1936, whatever, you can see it on my blog, that Rav Henkin said that the Bala Ozni Yeshua, the Yeshua Siegel, and he said, by the way, Ozni Yeshua, because that's where he talks about the Mechitza Yam and the Lo Yosef Amavata Mechitza more than an Erev Yitzhak. And he said that purposely, and he says, regarding that issue, that is it is an issue, he says, but see what, Rav Siegel said, and he never mentioned again a word about Rishus Haram. And take a look at the Kolkoire. Rav Henkin didn't sign the Kolkoire because he couldn't sign such a Kolkoire which talks about Rishus Haram. He didn't hold it.
I would point out that we're going to attach the link to his article where he dissects everything about this, but I would make 2.1 is his initial issue was Asur Rabim Vatim Mechitza because of Mechitza Sudei Shemayim, which is the Magen Avram. He's still going with the Chachamim, and that's what the Ozni issue is dealing with.
Exactly.
Not that he's saying that we pass in Asur Rabim only by Mechitza Sudei Shemayim based on the Taisus and the Achav Beis on the Beis. There are different ways of learning that Taisus. The second point I would make, the main point, is that he went and alleged that.
No, before you go further, there's more. What he passes Layasaram because even according to those who hold that Mechitza Sudei Shemayim are an issue, and you say Asur Rabim, so he says we don't have Rishus Haram here anyway because you don't have Shishin Riboy and the bridges are not mefilish.
That's the reason why the Chizur Shemayim helped as well.
And Rav Henkin saw that tshuva, so he understood that.
I was focusing. I'm trying to be short. Is that he never had the position that we say Asur Rabim Vatim Mechitza. The only question was, did you say that by Chizur Shemayim? Additionally, as the Baal Tanya explains as well, in Kontas Acher on that Magen Avram is a very long one, Sif Katan Beis and Sim Shimon Hey. Had to learn it, but the point is, it has to have Klatnai or Shusarav in order.
But that's in Manhattan itself.
Correct.
We have the.
Let's leave it. That's I was intentionally trying to avoid that because that's a very long topic. That's not Miguel and Yanenu. Let's go back on point. The point being is that he's coming to allege that Hagoan Rav Kasha was a liar. That when he said the last tshuva that he got, he lied. He's trying to. How does he assert that? He asserts that once Harav Henkin moved.
As his Torah. When as his Torah moved, he always crossed out.
He always crossed out the address, the old address on his paper. So therefore, the second to last tshuva, which is the Harav Kasha presented it, had it already crossed out. It must have came after. So, number one, there were 2 days of play that it could have still been even with the cross out. Number two, that's not enough evidence. It wasn't like a halacha that he had to cross it out. It could be he happened not to. If Rav Kasha says that was his last letter, then that was his last letter. He has a Chesed Kashas. This Rav clearly doesn't. Additionally, there's no real difference if it's the last or not. Because
this is what he missed.
Correct. When he says on an aktinan keiges Moshe, he says ein lismach ein limchos biyadam kilim. He's saying that we're not being moicha on those that are being makel. They have a lot to rely on. Rav Henkin's position was never fully. I'm great with everything in the air. Put my name on it. His position was that there's other abanim. He had some questions about the bridges. Of how that Tzuras HaPesach was. His point was, make it right away, even before you have Moser Rabbanim. I can't do it. I'm not the only Rav. There's many Rabbanim. In the beginning, it will be for Shas Chak. Now, what he held Shas Chak is including women needing to get out with their kids, which is something people should digest here. Because these Rabbanim clearly don't care about locking up people in their homes. And when they don't understand their Moshe, but aside from their Moshe, at the very least, be machmer for yourself. You have Chazanish, you have Chaim Oizer, you have the vast majority of Litvish Paiskim that wouldn't have an issue. You don't need to pick all the machmirim to torture people that need to get out. But point being is that Rav Henkin was bringing Rav Moshe's final position at the end of the Manhattan Eruv, where Rav Moshe was taking a much more lenient approach than he did originally, where you can't have an Eruv, where he's saying you can't be moich on those that are makel, they have what to be saying on, they're chashuv
Before the
rabbanim.
Kol Korah.
Correct.
Before the Kol Korah, there's 2 letters from
Right.
Moshe where he says that you could be soymech on the rabbanim. One is printed in some tes.
Right.
In Chelik
That's what's
Dalet.
in Limchis. Yeah, that's
the
one I was
Limchis. And
referring
there's
to.
another one that they printed now, and the Bris Moshe came from a Pardes
Right.
that Rav Kasha published. Whatever. Yeah, and both of those. So that's where Rav Henkin was saying that I'm following because you don't have all the rabbanim. So even if he is right, which he's not, or he's probably not right, that which is first or last, which came before the letter that Rav Henkin was saying that you could rely on the Shasat Chak, just to get
the
an
Eruv
Eruv
started.
done, an Eruv started, or that he said that he's following Rav Moshe. It's irrelevant. It's not that he's following Rav Moshe that it's Rishus Harabim. He didn't sign in the Kol Korah.
Maybe he's just not familiar with halachic text, because ein limches v'yadam kilim. If you're not saying mutar
Right.
sheyeh shoygin, definitely
Yes.
means that the Shas Chaki could use it. It
I'm
means that there's
100%.
it's brought all over halachic text that way.
He doesn't, whatever
He doesn't know or doesn't want to know.
But
A combination
this
of the two.
But this is his
yeah.
crown and glory, and he made a whole big deal about it. I won't get
But
into
look,
what he said.
he's accusing Kasha after he's not
yeah.
around to defend himself. What a chutzpah noga.
Exactly, and it's irrelevant in any case. And by the way, this thing with the crossing out, he didn't say it about his drasha, but
Right.
it was written in the Mishpacha magazine. He knows that I knew about this beforehand.
Right.
Whatever.
Okay, let's read your blog.
Yeah,
Let's leave that aside.
exactly. Any case, another issue is he wrote about Rosh Shlomo David Kahane. Another problem for them, and there was a Rav a Litvish Rav who went and actually another Rav as well who just totally ignored. They split the Warsaw in 2, so there wasn't Shishin Rebbe. It's ironic. We know that Warsaw had a problem with Shishin Rebbe. So Rav Shlomo David Kahane, who didn't want to rely on Shishin Rebbe, and he wrote that, said that we rely on him foolish. So yes, Rav Shlomo David Kahane. By the way, was he Chassidish?
I think he's a Litvish too.
Yeah,
I would say so.
Yeah. So Rav Shlomo David Kahane, why do they ignore?
Chazanish Litvish?
I
think so. No.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
How about Chaim Oizer?
Oh
No.
I don't. I just forget it. I give up already.
All right.
All right. Anyway, that's Rav Shlomo David Kahane.
How about Shlomo Zalman Auerbach? Is he Litvish?
Oh, he went to the Strymel. Anyway, Rav Aaron Kotler and Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, he mentioned as Dover Poshita. I mean, they were against the Brooklyn Eruv. I
He
challenge.
said it's famous.
Yeah, it's famous,
Precise,
right?
yeah.
I challenge him. Rabbi Kleinman, show me where they said so. They made it's very possible they would have been against it.
Certainly not famous. They didn't.
But it's
talk
not
about-
famous because they never signed anything about the Brooklyn Eruv. They only
just be
signed
clear,
on
right.
the Manhattan Eruv.
I'll just say this about Aaron Kotler's tshuva, is that if you accept his tshuva, then all Erevin are an issue.
Right.
Lakewood Erevin, all the small city Erevin, because he holds, you don't go with shita Rashi, he holds Asur Alban Batim Mechitza.
And the
Pirtzas are
foolish
Deraisa, Carmelis needs doors.
and
The foolish
is-
doesn't mean straight, it's connected to Chaima.
Right.
Leaving that aside, he didn't finish the tshuva, and in Klal Yisrael, we're not meant to rely on
Oh, but
such
you
a
know
tshuva.
why he wouldn't believe that? Because it's Rav Kasha who brings down.
Well, you
Like
can see it in the
tshuva.
tshuva.
Yeah.
If you read the
forgot.
tshuva.
Yeah, at the end of 2 places. you
Yeah,
could
he
see-
leaves it. He didn't
He
finish
leaves
it.
it, didn't he?
If you learn the tshuva carefully, you'll see
You'll
it for
see.
yourself. If
Right.
someone emails
But
us, we'll
Kasha
send it to
brings it
them.
down. B'shem Rav Shnei
Right.
that his father never finished the tshuva. Yeah.
Now, the point being is, aside for the Klal Yisrael, for those that don't want to accept Klal Yisrael, is this, leaving that aside, there's an obvious point there. It would seem very plausible that at the end of the tshuva, he would write that this is my position. I'm not saying he didn't hold that way. However, the minig is against what I'm saying. All the Arabim were like that. So, ein limchais, which is, you see when someone takes such a totally mechudesh approach against the established minig and halacha. Minig is very important. And I think what adds even more weight to that is, in reality, there's many psukim of how you make tzuras HaPesachim and the dinim of Erevin that come in his name, whether it's through Rabbi Heiniman or other Eruv, that were all the kula and they were affecting other Eruvin. So it doesn't seem like Lemaisa he was actively against it that way. He probably wouldn't carry in it, but I wouldn't say that he would actively be against it that you could take from that tshuva. But again, if you do, then all Eruvin are an issue.
Right, and obviously they don't follow Navaran even in Lakewood. There's so many Arab in Lakewood.
Yeah.
This is it's unbelievable. I mean, yes, I know there are people who think it's the 9, but it's not the 9. It's almost
Something to do with the
every
9.
single Arab in Lakewood. So obviously, if they don't follow him in his own backyard,
Right.
so to speak, don't try to sell us about here in Brooklyn.
Talking about something else he said there, I remember he says that the Harav Tzvi, the tshuva, this at least he said he's not sure, he's going off memory, but that he compares our Eruvin in Manhattan to
Paris.
not our Eruv, the Eruv that was discussed then to Paris. He doesn't make any mention of Paris, and he doesn't even get into the din Shasarabim. He says that he was weak and he didn't have the time. He gets into the fact that Eruv is a mitzvah, and once it's a mitzvah, you can't be geyser nu gzeres. You can't say if I make an Eruv, then people are going to carry elsewhere, people are going to carry muktzah or pirtza, all these different gzeres.
It's against Rav Moshe, actually. He's arguing on Rav Moshe.
But the Nakoda of Rav Moshe is like, I don't know, I don't think so, because the Nakoda of Rav Moshe is only about carrying elsewhere, and it's the whole. It could be, but
it's probably that's what Rav Kasha was trying to.
But I think there is a fundamental difference because in Moshe's tshuva, he's saying that you're going to end up carrying it in another place.
Right.
They didn't make a shear in Manhattan, so if you don't have a shear is a din that if you make an Eruv around the whole city, you leave one house out of there. If you're Mishayir that house out to serve as a reminder you can't carry. In Manhattan, they didn't do that. They were using the existing island wall, so they used Brooklyn as their shear, which is brought in the Meiri and another Rishon. It's not brought in Shulchan Aruch, so there would be some room for that. There were definitely other chashas that I think he might have been referring to. As it is, Rav Moshe, there's a shmatza later, that many years later, where he makes it clear that what he brought regarding Manhattan, that people are going to carry elsewhere, etc., is only in a place where he thought that there was also an issue of Shasarabim. That obviously wasn't the main. He says it's pashut in places that don't have this issue. Tzurat HaPesach v'chein tzivisi. So, when people trying to build off of that, I have an article where I address this at length, where I talk about the mitzvah in general. The second half of the article is addressing just the shita of Rav Moshe. It's printed in Avei Big Verse. I will post a link onto the YouTube or on the email when we send this out.
The next thing was London Dalsis.
Oh, so I was finishing my point. What is the Harav Tzvi trying to do? I think he realized that once you establish that this is a mitzvah, that you have to make an Eruv, and you can't say that the Eruv itself is going to lead to bad things, therefore you don't want to do it, then there's no reason to be mefalpel in the Dinei Shasarabim, because all someone has to do is read Rav Moshe's tshuva. If you read Siman Kuf Mem, it's very clear he's arguing directly on the Magen Avraham, as he is in Kuf Lamates, but on the main din of Shasarabim. And the Ramban and many of the great poskim, he uses very strong language. He's very clear, unlike those that want to come and revisionize history, that somehow the Magen Avraham is agreeing with him. And as does Aaron Cutler say clearly in the shuvah, he's arguing. Therefore, if you have a mitzvah and you have Rav Moshe being a mechadish, obviously you're going to make the Eruv, and someone that's going to follow Rav Moshe is not going to carry possibly, or someone going to only carry Rishas Adchach. You're not going to say we're fighting it. You can't make an Eruv, you can't make the mitzvah when Rav Moshe is clearly being a mechadish. You're going to go with the Gdei Poskim. And I think that's was very helpful, the Harav Tzvi's tshuva. Right. And that was a big part of getting the Manhattan Eruv done.
There's another thing that he mentioned, I started to say about the London Dalsis. I was somewhat involved in the London Eruv, and I told the Rabbanim that making Dalsis is a shtiyot, and it's not helpful. You're not going to make anybody who's against it any happier with Dalsis. The record has been that no one signs because of Dalsis. They either believe you can make without Dalsis, or with Dalsis it doesn't make a difference. And the truth is, Rabbi Kleinman, because of his error and his belief that Rav Moshe would be against it because it's Rishus Harabim should also be against Alsa's if he would know Rav Moshe's Shuvas, but he doesn't know it. So, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
Finally, I just want to say that he mentions Rabbi Kleinman that Boro Park maintains a sophisticated system for weekly inspection. Let's set the record straight. I'm on the Boro Park Eruv as well, one of its founding members. I know a little better than Rabbi Kleinman what happens here in Boro Park. No, there's no sophisticated system. We have a mashgiach that goes around, just like Brooklyn has a mashgiach that goes around and checks it every week. So, yeah, we all have Chol Shever Rabbanim. Boro Park has a Chol Shever Rabbanim, and so does Williamsburg, and so does Brooklyn. So, and they share the same Rav. Rav Yankov Zayda.
Is it Rav Hamachshir of the Williamsburg Eruv as well?
Williamsburg Eruv as well. So let me just say this. Our Eruv is as kosher as any of them. And Rabbi Kleinman to suggest that there's some sophisticated system is just trying to other that Eruv, like the Boro Park Eruv, which he doesn't want to get into the fight, even though he himself is against it. He doesn't want to get into it, so he says, "Oh, but Boro Park, it was established, and there's so many tens of thousands of Eden who are carrying. Like, he's not going to go and start over again that fight. So yeah, they're special, sophisticated. No, they're not. There's no difference. It's angeret zachen, and it's a lie. It's not even angeret. It's just sheker. That's all it is.
Right. No, quite. It's a figment of his imagination, as the other stuff were.
Yeah.
I want to raise a very important point here. Rabbi Kleinman states one of his tinus is that since you're making an error for the whole community, you can't be makel, or we're not being makel, but I want to address the tina, and you have to be used to the shittas. And this really comes from the people that were hired to raise this issues, where this all comes from. That they state in their book that they have an edus, yeah. They have this edus from Rav Moshe Feinstein. When you make an error for the city, you have to be yotze all the days, and this is how they try to justify their approach, which they say straight out is that since we can't stop error, they're going to happen either way. We have to make sure they're yotze every shita. This is Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Pesach of America, and therefore we have to follow him. So let me just state clearly, they clearly do not know Rav Moshe's chuvas, as we proved in other stuff that we wrote in the contest where they clearly missed what Rav Moshe wrote. And they claim that's their main Pesach. But Rav Moshe clearly was the most makel, not on every issue, but I'm going to show you right here, an unbelievable kola. In Oyer Chaim Beis, Simon Tzaddik, regarding the Seagate Eruv, he says that if you have a suffix, that you're not sure if there's a gap of 10 amas, because it's difficult to measure the tail mislaket, we'll consider it impossible, efshar, to measure, and therefore, since it's suffix d'Rabbanan, we'll go to kola and allow that possible gap. This is an unheard of kola. Our Rav Hamachshir wouldn't go for it, and I challenge anybody to find in the Pesachim a Pesach that allowed this. Now, it's possible in Eruvin, you never know. Like, there's so much written, I can't say I've seen everything, but I will be very surprised. The only thing that I have seen is where there was a shoyel to the Beis Shlomo who mentions that the Rav was mater a pirtza Yesrim Eser with Pasei Chatzer, one pirtza, and the Beis Shlomo rejects it and says that's talking about the heter, the marit, with a separate heter, but it was rejected. I challenge anyone to find such a major kula. So don't tell us that Rav Moshe had this position for a city Eruv. Seagate, it's a city Eruv. They had to be out to every shit.
There's other things.
The other things that he's very making on the time. But this is written in Igros Moshe. I don't want to get into what people say.
Right.
Additionally, it's more complex, but in Simon Peites, his shita regarding Asya Vida, the Haggis is against the vast majority of Paiskim. Lakula.
Yeah.
Someone that knows the topic could read the Erdechaim Simon Peites, learn it, and they'll see for themselves. So to state that Rav Moshe is the one that established this idea, this precedent, that unlike any other area of halacha, Eruvin is where you have to be yotze every single shita, is just sheker, and it never happened. They're just using him as a weapon for their own agenda. It's
Which is
obviously
to
not
be
L'Shem
anti-
Shemayim.
to be- to
Well, for the other
obstruct
guy, just to
Eruv.
make money.
Yeah, well,
made a business out
to
of
make
it.
a-
Yeah.
So basically, so he can't be trusted, and if he heard it as a shmua and didn't make it up himself, that person also shouldn't be trusted. But the bottom
I
line
wouldn't
is,
trust his Avis.
I don't trust not Kokoris and not the shmuas, particularly when it comes to Erevin, because
Especially
there's so many
L'Chumra.
people with
If they manage to pull out something L'Kola, then you would want to trust it. As an example, when I did speak to this person, Panim in the past, he clearly states that he knows from Rav Shlomo Miller that the Mishna Berurah himself carried in city Erev that was reliant on shita Rashi, basically, where he says Bal Nefesh Yachmer Lo Yismach Al Mekilam Elu. And he didn't put that in his book, because in his book, obviously, why would you do that? You're trying to make it sound like you can never carry an Erev, and only possibly he brings, without any sources, that many hold that even if you're going to use an Erev, it could only be if you leave your stroller out, and it's you're carrying a kid. No poiskim. If you look at my article about the mitzvah, there's a whole list of Dailei poiskim that made a point that Dafka carrying an Erev. Obviously, an Erev the health was kosher and includes Rav Moshe. So this is just their agenda regarding Erev, and they can't be trusted.
By the way, this thing that he said, B'Shem Shlomo Miller, this brings up another topic, which is typical of them. They bring things in the name of another Rav that Rav Moshe held about something, and Rav Moshe writes it explicitly in his Shuvas.
Right.
So they obviously don't even know Rav Moshe's Shuvas.
Right.
And by the way, we don't need Rav Shlomo Miller to say
It's written.
that it's written in Dugma B'Darkei Avi.
Right.
The son of the Chofetz Chaim wrote that he usually didn't carry. I mean, but meaning he carried at times.
Right, when he needed it.
When he needed something.
That's not what he told me. The name of Shlomo Miller, but that's probably where it's. Either
That's
way, we'll go. What's written
That's
in
the source. That's the source.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Now the reason why you would use it only when he needs it is because those Erev in the small shtetl do not have mechitzas ayim merubah, and did have straight streets from one end to the other. Therefore, you're relying on shita Rashi, which is that 600,000 people are not going over the street at one time in one day. Lav dafka at one time. Even though Rav Moshe Chiddush would hold it all the streets together at one time, we'll leave that aside. Some poskim would say at one time the Shishim Ribu even on the street of Asachas, but point being is that he had a reason to be machmer there, and when he needed it, he used it.
Right.
But they wouldn't put that in their sefer, obviously.
Right. So in summation, again, I think we demonstrated his shmuas are fiction, figments of his imagination, his claims, his arguments. His halachic arguments are either outright haratzus or just simply didn't go through the Indian and doesn't fully, doesn't grasp.
A lot of it was just Toyah B'Dvar Mishnah.
Toyah,
Sometimes there's a concept, even if you think somebody's wrong, there's some room to learn otherwise, and kachi that and it's up to the viewer to decide. A lot of this is like literally just Toss B'Dvar Mishnah, which is
and again, and his argument, about dalsis, it's baloney. It's you need dalsis b'chol laila. I just I would like to leave off with something that Rav Shlomo Gross, the Belzadayin, Zechron Brucha, was a very good friend of mine. Told me once that Rabbanim cannot just shoot from the hip. They can't just say something that's against halacha and or without or rather that is
just their opinion. They need to write it and prove it.
You write it out, you prove it. This is exactly it, and I hope that the listener understands. We had no alternative over here but to come out. This is to protect our Rav. It's to protect you people who are using the area.
Right.
And it's the ultimate chutzpah what happened here. This was done in this terrible, disgusting manner. If for somebody to get up and have the hubris and the chutzpah to talk against someone like that without talking to us, listen, we had to do what we did, and I hope that you follow through with everything we're saying. Look it up. Look up the halachas. Look at my blog. Look at what Ravelli over here wrote. You'll see whatever we do is sourced, and it's just not.
I'll state further. We had a video here where I was trying to be mekatzer as much as I can, because ain't lover soft. If anyone feels that something's missed out or they think otherwise, if you write respectfully, kedarkek shel Torah, I guarantee you that we'll respond to you. And if you write something la'alacha kedarkek shel Torah, it will also go to our Rav Hamachshir. Let him look at it.
Yeah,
and
I think
it will
that
be
should
addressed.
I want to address that.
Right, that's a good thing.
That very important. That listen, our Rav Hamachshir has been people have been driving him crazy and so on. If you have an issue, send it to us.
Don't call him and drive him
Don't call him
nuts.
and drive him crazy. It's chutzpah. He's a Eruv and a very choshev Eruv. It's not right if somebody has a shaila or this, send it to us. We have a right to vet it. It's not a taina that he doesn't answer every call, because he can't answer all the shtia. 99.99% of the things asked of him are hevel, and if somebody needs to answer it, we could answer that. Don't bother him. But if it's something that's
if someone writes a tshuva,
a
kedarkek shel Torah with an
Kedarkek
issue,
shel Torah,
even if we
100%,
answer it, we'll
pass
send
it
it to
along.
yeah.
We'll
it's
pass
not
it
an issue.
along. Again,
And if you want, you could send it in the mail to his house. It's not a problem. Don't call him and harass him. He has you have his address and the a tshuva,
Yeah.
also fine.
and his
Don't harass him on the phone. It's just not
there's
being
two
meticulous.
things. One is, I want to say on the point that we will answer, we'll take care. Just know one thing, that I think we've shown more respect than the Tzada Asr. We actually know Rav Moshe Shuvas, and they're demonstrating they don't even know Rav Moshe Shuvas. So who is the one who has respect for Rav Moshe? Them, who are saying things in his name, or us.
And they're justifying this whole Chilul Hashem in his name.
It's unbelievable. And the last thing I would like to say is, again, I don't know if there's another area that's built by somebody who knows Aaron as well as Aurelia over here, who goes around and spends time on the bucket truck, which a sight to behold. Trying to it's unbelievable.
We're going the bucket truck. We're going to repair.
Well, to
we have our
repair or
bucket truck,
whatever.
correct.
I think that instead of being thankful that this Eruv was made by the hechsha of a very choshev Eruv and made by a responsible board and someone who actually knows what Hilchos Eruv, and instead they flip it on its head and dry a cup and
It's a Yid in Williamsburg.
Yid in Williamsburg, and make us sound like we're some,
Leave it to this. Someone that, let's put it this way, without someone that's moida on a topic that he doesn't know. If you can look in your day, days, you'll see what such a person is called.
Yeah, exactly. The biggest chilul Hashem.
Yeah.
We'll leave it as such.
We're sorry that it came under this way. It's not what we wanted, but we were left with no choice.
We'd love to continue with real.
In the future, we're just going to do videos that are just about positive Eruv Torah. This is not what we're looking forward to. Hatzlach Rabba. Thank you.
Kol tov, everyone. And thanks for listening.